Hey everyone, this is the Failures and Wins podcast. I'm your host, Victor Dwyer, and today we have Chelsea on from SoStocked. Really cool tool. Got to check it out before this. We're going to be talking everything inventory on Amazon, and we're also going to be talking about some failures and wins she went through, some hurdles that she may have encountered on her journey, and let's just dive right into it. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining today. We'd love to get an
Yeah.
intro with you.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me. I guess a little bit of an intro to me. I have been selling on Amazon since 2014. So definitely experienced the highs and the lows, the failures and the wins.
Mhm.
And so let's see, in 2018, that was kind of really when I felt like I needed something more with inventory, and I needed to. I had stocked out twice that year, once for a
Wow.
month and once for like a week. So
Mhm.
really looking at, I'm not making as much money or keeping as much money as I should.
Mhm.
And that was kind of how SoStocked came about, was couldn't find a tool that was good enough to do what I needed it to do. And that was where I met my business partner. We launched SoStocked in 2019, and it's been growing from there.
I with my clients, I honestly before COVID, inventory really wasn't that big of a deal because my clients could ship in 20,000 units of the thing, and all they
Mhm.
had to worry was that storage fees, and that was it. But
Yeah.
after COVID, Amazon was like, "Oh yeah, inventory limits, they're a thing now," and then
Yeah.
everybody was like, "What do we do?" Like everyone was screwed
Hmm.
with these, and there was horrible inventory limits during COVID, like
Yeah.
some of my clients could only send in like 20 units. And it's like you
Yeah.
can't make money when you only send 20 units in. And then
Yes.
after COVID, inventory was really hard. You had supply chain issues coming up. Like then you
Hmm.
have to get really good with inventory, and like after COVID, you have to really watch it. So you were in a really good business for because after COVID, it's something that you can't just like overlook anymore. It's something that
Yeah.
you have to make sure you hit the inventory limits. You have to make sure you have to restock it and lead times and supply
Hmm.
chain issues, which is even crazier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I bet all those things impacted inventory, right?
Yeah. It was, I like to say it was a conversation. When we started, it was a conversation nobody wanted to have. And then it became a conversation that everyone was dying to have.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
we were in a great position for that. And, the way that I view it is that our community and our industry is finally growing up into their businesses. We have been very marketing centric, and the inventory and the cash flow portions are kind of over here, and they're just kind of like
yeah,
this reactionary thing that goes to feed the beast of the marketing. But getting really good at inventory and getting really good at cash flow is what allows you to truly scale.
true, true. Like yeah, especially when people were like, it was just really tough during COVID when everything was just basically you couldn't send anything in during COVID. So that was even tougher. But
Yeah.
stepping back a little bit, going through this journey of you going through Amazon Seller and then having trouble with inventory, stocking out, like obviously when you did stock out, I bet your heart sank at that point. You were like, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do?"
Yeah.
Um, can you go into a little bit about like what when that it wasn't necessarily failure when that pitfall happened? Like
Hmm.
what were you going through? Like oh my gosh, what do I need to do next? Like can you go into that
Uh-huh.
a little bit?
Yeah, there were two kind of moments where that happened. The first moment was in 2015, where we sent inventory in to Amazon, and they lost our inventory right before Christmas, and then
Wow.
they found it right after Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
Which
That really stinks. That really
Yeah, and
stinks.
so it was. I guess we had just missed the cutoff date, and we had sent in, a truckload, and we had friends who even past the cutoff date were getting their small parcel delivery shipments in, but we had sent everything via truck, and it was basically just sitting there. And that was when I kind of adopted what I call the golden rule, which is don't let anybody have all your stuff. that was kind of like that first thing of, okay, number one, don't let anybody have all your stuff. When I tend to ask people, they tell me about their stock out stories. I like to say, well, what was it that caused that stock out? And the majority of time, I mean, it's nowadays there's a lot of supply chain stuff, but the majority of time is I gave all my stuff to someone,
Yeah.
Amazon, or you put all your stuff on a boat and it got stuck at port, whatever it is, it's that you don't have your inventory in enough places where you could deploy them if the other option goes wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Being diverse. So that was a big lesson on basically not having all your eggs in one basket and
Yeah.
having maybe multiple vendors, multiple distributors and things like that to make it where all your eggs aren't in one basket to basically have some diverse thing. But sometimes that can be expensive when it comes to um, using different, like having all those things segmented in a different way. It can get confusing and
Yeah.
also expensive. What is your way around that?
Yeah. So first off, starting at the source, at your supplier level, let's say you're shipping a container
Yeah.
and you want to send that container, but you don't want that container to be your only stock. The idea would be you got your container, you purchase a container full plus say a month or so of inventory, additional inventory. Keep that extra inventory with your supplier. They can usually hold that for free for say 3 months or so. So you have them hold that inventory, you ship the container, and then you can usually negotiate to have them only charge you for what you ship out. So you
Hmm.
pay 30%. You want to, say if it's 30% down for the entire shipment, 70% on the container. And then so you haven't paid the other 70% on this shipment and you're not paying storage fees. So you're only really fronting that 30%. So it helps to ease up your cash flow. And so you're not out all of that money all at once.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really smart. That's really smart, actually. When it comes to, so question for you, recently did a LinkedIn post on 3PLs, which
Mm-hmm.
is different from like an inventory's perspective, but when it comes to warehousing it, um, I basically, the LinkedIn post put something like this: hey, I'm curious if anyone actually likes their 3PL. And
Mm-hmm.
the LinkedIn post basically said, yes, I love my 3PL. And the second option was no, all 3PLs suck. And what's
Uh-huh.
funny is 62% said no, they all suck. So, question for
Uh-huh.
you:
Yeah.
is there actually such thing as a 3PL that is good? Because it's like
Mhm.
either the inventory on Amazon breaks, or there's some type of problem with not checking the expiration date, or like it seems like everything, there's not like one good one out there. Do you have
Mhm.
another experience?
I mean, it varies, and sometimes you can have a 3PL that is doing well and then stops doing well.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very interesting time because as Amazon shifted, a lot of things changed for 3PLs. All of the 3PLs became completely overloaded.
Yeah.
Amazon was returning inventory to people, like just wholesale. Like people were getting there were people 3PLs getting a full truck like just dumped of inventory and it wasn't organized at all. It was like this is this client, that's that client, and they didn't even have time to sort it out. So they were running out of space. They were, had all of this stuff coming in. And so the 3PLs have had a real hard time being able to organize. A lot of them have caught up to that, but they still don't have availability, because the other thing that was happening is that Amazon was buying up all of the warehouses around, like California. My friend had tried to buy another warehouse in California or rent one, and Amazon had already placed a bid on it. And so he
Wow.
has not been able to expand. And so that's why a lot of these 3PLs have a real hard time with what they're doing. And so it's really has to do with, you have to go and get referrals from people. You can't just look at what's the cheapest price, because if someone doesn't have their stuff together, they're going to, your stuff is going to be late. So that's one of the issues. The other issue is that some of these companies started to create FBA portions of or FBM portions of their business. So they have, replenishment to Amazon, and then FBM, fulfillment. And during the holidays, when that fulfillment, which they had just recently added, got busy, they hadn't staffed up enough. And so they had to get that stuff out. So the replenishment stuff got pushed to the side. So that was a problem that developed as well. And when you're talking to a 3PL, you should really start diving into asking those questions of, do you have, both of these services? How do you handle that? Because it might be good for you to go with one person who is, just doing FBM fulfillment, and one company that's doing replenishment, and keep those separate unless they can tell you what their hiring and training strategy is going into the fourth quarter.
So if you were, I know this is unfair to say, but if you were to rank 3PLs, like, I think the most one I've ever had success with is probably Deliver's, the closest thing, even though there is a lot of crap happening there. Yeah. That's probably my highest one right now. What is your top three that if any general person were to recommend, like a 3PL, what is your top three?
I mean, yeah, that's kind of very personal. We personally use Hanu worldwide. They're in Pennsylvania, so it's getting a little bit harder to find something in California. HubDub is good. I know Eddie Levine, he really knows his stuff, and so he would be a good resource. And then off the top of my head, I'm blanking on this other one. I'll have to pull it up and send it to you to post, or I can comment on the links. But they have a system where they basically rent available space in different warehouses across the country, and then they're able to distribute your stuff, kind of similar to the way Amazon does. So I'll have to pull up their name. I forget their name offhand. But there's really good reviews with them too, with some of the people that we work with.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. And then so as you probably went through this entrepreneurial journey with everything else, did you find, for example, for me, I'm personally horrible at graphic design and copy. So I am awful. Like if I were to write anything longer than 2 sentences, I have enough skills to write a LinkedIn post, which is like 2 sentences. Anything after that, it looks like a 6th grader wrote it. Like, I'm just going to be 100% honest. So that is one of my biggest weaknesses. I communicate via words and via video very, very well, but through anything text-based, horrible. Copy-based, horrible. So question to you, is there anything that when you went on this journey, you said, wow, this is something I either need to work on or something I need to delegate to someone else because I'm not that good at? Is that like your weaknesses and strengths you kind of went through?
In my Amazon journey, you mean, in general?
Yeah, just in general, or your Amazon journey.
Yeah. So I would say my strengths are in copywriting. That's kind of the first thing that I actually ended up training on and speaking on is copywriting, and have a copywriting agency as well. But PPC, I never was really a huge fan of PPC. So that was one of those things where I was like, yeah, give it over to someone else to do.
Yeah.
So, which is, I think it's important to know what you're good at and what you're not. Also, customer service, it just stresses me out, so I give that to my husband.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of customer service either. I do love like engaging with people, but only when it's in a positive way. If it's more of a yelling experience, I'm like, I'll probably pass on that.
Yeah. It was actually, it worked out well because for the first 2 years of SoStocked, I did all of the onboarding calls,
Okay.
and my partner Dan did all of the help desk tickets. And he's a very even keel guy, so he was able to handle the the complaints that come in on help desk tickets, and I was able to onboard people and talk to them about their business, learn a little bit more. And the thing that happened over those 2 years is we were able to get direct feedback from hundreds of sellers to be able to improve the product and build personal relationships, so that we felt like there was a partnership, there's a vested interest in
Mhm.
them working with us, because we were building a tool for the community rather than just a tool to work the way that we thought it should.
Yeah, that's really cool. And for the people that don't necessarily know your tool, um, basically, SoStocked, the way I explain it on a surface level, is basically having the inventory forecasting feature and having the variables in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of inventory forecasting tools will work off of only historical data,
Yep.
and that's where I thought it was valuable to have the variables in there. For example,
Mm-hmm.
Prime Day, Fall Prime Day, that did not exist last year. So all of a
Right.
sudden, if your inventory forecasting is going to be very level, and then all of a sudden Fall Prime Day, your inventory forecasting is completely different now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what I found valuable in SoStocked. Is
Mm-hmm.
there any other features that are super valuable? You can go off either the having that variation of having the variables in there. Is there
Uh-huh.
any other things that you find that are super valuable in SoStock for sellers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our sales velocity algorithm. So because it's two things. It's I call it the science of past data and the art of future planning. And those are kind
Yeah.
of the two pieces that really help you to get things right in terms of forecasting, or as right as you
Yep.
possibly can in something that's forecasting. So you know what your plans are, you can put your plans in there, but to take data at face value is going to get you into some trouble. We
Yep.
look at, the fact that, like, I was actually working with someone, a wholesale seller, early on, and he had competing software to SoStocked, and it was giving him one piece of data. He made a spreadsheet for his best sellers because he had a large catalog, and for his best sellers, he said, I need to use, this is not accurate enough. I keep stocking out. Get this spreadsheet. Use the spreadsheet, still stocking out. So he's got two different pieces of forecasting systems that are both still causing him to stock out. Came into SoStocked, took a look at SoStocked, and he was like, that's ridiculous. That's not my velocity. That's way too high.
Yeah.
And one of the software was saying 8 units a day. The Excel spreadsheet was saying 10 units when we were saying 15 units a day. And
Wow.
when you start to like unpack, so you have the same data, but it's how it's being processed. And one of the big pieces that is missing is a lot of these tools look at, did you have inventory? And they look at, and you can get historically from Amazon, did you have inventory?
Got it.
Yeah. So that's what
I
they're looking
Yeah.
at. But then there's this other factor of, well, what if you stocked out, and you were used to 100 sales, and then you went down to like 15 sales right before you stocked out? Amazon found that one unit that one time during the stock out, and then they count that as an in-stock day. And then let's go back in stock, and we sell 10 units, and we count that as an in-stock day. And so those are the numbers that when you put it into like a 30-day average is going to completely destroy your sales velocity, your actual sales velocity. So we adjust it and call it a daily adjusted velocity. And it's adjusted for sales
Mm.
spikes, meaning if you had a huge sales day because some influencer mentioned you somewhere, and then that's not going to happen next month. Or if you had the stockouts, especially if you had a very low sales day before the stockout, or even if you have a suspension. Because if we're looking at, did you have inventory? You had inventory during your suspension, but you didn't have a live listing. So if you're not looking at all of those variables, the numbers will be very wrong, and it'll cause you to place an order based on the wrong sales velocity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's really smart actually, because I think that's how most people look at it, is their daily velocity when over the last few days, but they might have like that one day unit would just completely throw everything off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really smart that you were able to count. And then once you pair in TikTok influencer stuff, like I've
Mm-hmm.
had clients that literally
Right.
got $20,000 in sales increase in one day from a
Yeah.
TikTok post that went viral. So
Yeah. That's like
I bet
TikTok
you
made me
hearing
buy
that
it.
is like, oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
It's like the
Yeah.
worst thing ever,
Yeah.
inventory planning wise.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Exactly.
that's amazing that you're able to account for all those variables. There were
Mhm.
so many options that you could have had in there that like could easily increase or decrease sales velocity. So that's really
Mhm.
amazing that you're able to calculate that and look at it past that 90-day window. You go more than to that 180-day window, and even
Mhm.
further than that sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
Looking at last year's sales. Yeah.
yeah, that's really amazing. Is there um is there any feature or anything else that like any other feature within SoStocked that you find extremely valuable
Mhm.
within there other than the forecasting feature?
Yeah. I mean, this part is kind of in the forecasting feature. There's a couple of different things. One that I feel is the unsung hero of the tool is called the inventory timeline, because it gives you a rundown of your daily sales, what is going to happen, when you need to transfer in, when you're going to have a planned sale. And
Yeah.
people who are not numbers heavy, they don't like Excel spreadsheets. That helps to really visualize and kind of foresee, why is it telling me that I'm going to stock out, or why do I need to order more inventory. You can actually see it on there. So that's a little bit of a perk. There are, of course, other features, but that I think
Mhm.
is pretty valuable.
So question for you. I didn't know if this was true or not. Does this work with Amazon exclusively, just with Amazon's warehouse, or does this work with other FBM model warehouses too?
So with FBM, we can pull anything that comes from Amazon. So with
Got it.
FBM, we are not connected to a warehouse. So
Got it.
we are going to be building out a connection, an API for that. But there is a workaround where if Amazon sales are coming through FBM, we get that data from Amazon, and then you can go in and do a bulk kind of clearing out and pull that stock out of the warehouse based on the FBM sales that come through.
Okay. Yeah. I almost always recommend clients to have an FBM listing,
Yeah.
especially after COVID, when Amazon said, yeah, FBA stock, that doesn't exist anymore. And when
Hmm.
they said you can't send in any more, after that, that taught us that hopefully you learn from that, saying, hey, you got
Yeah.
to not have that anymore where you can't rely just on Amazon's warehouses. Like
Hmm.
going back to diversity, what you were
Yeah.
saying, having a diverse, like making sure once your FBA goes out of stock, you have a backup plan for
Uh-huh.
FBM,
Yeah.
because the clients that did have FBM, Amazon would take it like Amazon before COVID only took about 1 to 2 weeks to process inventory. It was
Hmm.
fairly quick. When you send it, 1 to 2 weeks, they process it.
Yeah.
After COVID or like during COVID, it was months to
Yeah.
actually get that
Hmm.
where they were was actually fulfillable.
Yeah.
And like if you did not have FBM in place, you lost sales for a whole month. It's like
Hmm.
horrible
Yeah.
what they went through. So I almost
Mhm.
always have a recommendation to have some type of FBM strategy in place for all your products. It
Mhm.
it's annoying. It's annoying on the back end to do, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's so worth it to do that because
Mhm.
you could be screwed at one point if you're not diverse enough on your FBA to FBM strategy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and one of the to your point about Amazon taking forever, and there's still some of that, as you know, as I did a poll as recently as April where people were finding 2 to 4 weeks of check-in time, and I'm foreseeing that's going to be something that happens yet again especially because UPS is limiting the amount of shipments that they're going to be allowing Amazon to send through UPS. The one of the things to note is that Amazon controls a lot of how truckers get their stuff into Amazon. And so they'll make them contractually, they have them drop the trailer. And that's why you see 6 weeks go by without things being checked in. So one of the tricks to ask, and this would actually be a good question for calling in a 3PL, is ask them if they can do a live, if they have carriers that will do live unload. So that's kind of like the magic. But if someone doesn't know what that is, you don't want to be dealing with them as a 3PL. But most people should know what a live unload is. And that basically is when that truck gets that delivery date, they're dropping it off and they're unloading it directly, and they're leaving with an empty trailer versus dropping the trailer and leaving it in a parking lot and having to drive away. So that's a big thing that has been able to impact certain people's businesses, is getting into learning more about, with a good 3PL, they should be able to help you to improve your check-in times.
I think I did learn that from you from your last presentation that you did in Austin, the seller meetup. I think that's where I got that hint, and I was like, "Wow, that's really smart." I didn't know enough about inventory to like actually express that in words, but I was like, that was so smart. So yes, that's a really good tip. If you're ever wanting to do that, that's amazing. What does that? How much does that decrease the time by doing that? Like, by using the live unload trick versus the not, does that decrease it by a week, 2 weeks?
I mean, it really just depends on how backed up Amazon is. If Amazon was taking 6 weeks to check in your inventory, let's say, for example, it takes you 2.5, 3 weeks to get an appointment, right? So you get your appointment, and it's Amazon, because they own a lot of these trailers. They'll generally want to prioritize their trailers. But so they might, if we had a non-Amazon trailer and an Amazon trailer, they might put their date here and their delivery date is here. And your delivery date might be here. Let's say, you're 3 weeks out and they're 2 weeks out. But when all is said and done, what we're interested in is what I call net check-in time. And if Amazon drops off in 2 weeks and then 4 weeks later they check out, but you're dropping off in 3 weeks, and that is the delivery date is the unload date, then that's where the spread comes in, is that even if your delivery time is later, that's your check-in time within a few days, essentially. So it's hard to say. It depends on where Amazon's at in terms of their own system, how backed up they are, which will be increasing as we get further into the fourth quarter coming up. But that's kind of how that system would work.
Is there an increase of cost to do that by asking your 3PL to do that most of the time?
I'm not sure that there's an increase in cost. These 3PLs or these carriers tends to be how they operate. So I don't know if it's not necessarily for them, but it will be more expensive generally than what you're paying Amazon.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's by using a different carrier. Is that like, or is it asking like UPS can't do this? Is that right? Like it's a certain carrier that will be able to do it, right?
Maybe. I mean, you'll have to ask. The 3PLs know more about this stuff and all the changes. So I always say, go to your 3PL and find out what is the best now, because Amazon used to be the best option and not anymore. And the people who find that out are the people who deal with it on a daily basis, sending shipments out. So it would be, asking them. I did a talk at Prosper, kind of a co-hosted with Eddie Levine from HubDub, and he recommended Uber Freight was a good option for live unload.
That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Is there any other thing when it comes to going through your journey personally or professionally that there was an obstacle that came your way,
Mhm.
and that was super valuable, a super valuable learning that you took from that, that made it
Mhm.
where like it changed your perspective, like where you
Mhm.
said, oh my gosh, this huge roadblock happened. It could have been your stock out, it could have been anything, and
Mhm.
saying, oh my gosh, Victor, this thing happened and it changed, and I went, oh, this is how I navigated it, and this is
Mhm.
what I learned. Is there any situation that you can think of that has came your way
Mhm.
that would make sense?
I mean, I think that, ultimately the inventory piece, I always knew that I wanted to to help entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
Even early on, it was, I'm doing this business, and I know that it's going to lead me to other things and to other, paths on my journey.
yeah,
And it was really, so I was talking, helping entrepreneurs, and my husband and I, we tended to be doing more helping of entrepreneurs than, we were more passionate about that than our own business.
yeah,
So when I had the inventory stuff come up, and I was really looking at how can I fix this? I really immersed myself in inventory. It became the only thing that I was doing practically. It took so much time. Started looking for tools, and then started really just asking around. And I think that was a big aha moment for me was, you know, as an entrepreneur, you're always like, I wish I could find that thing. I wish if there was like a thing that people needed and I could just think of it. And
yeah,
and we tend to like want to do that. And it was one of those instances where I was asking around, what are you using? And they kept saying, everyone I asked was, we've tried everything, nothing works right. We're back to spreadsheets. And for me, that was kind of like the aha moment.
mhm,
And so I said, okay, well, I went to a friend of mine. I said, hey, can you build this into your software? Because he owned an Amazon software and he didn't want to. So then I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to have to build it. And then I ended up 2 weeks later meeting my business partner, and so that was kind of that journey. But the biggest lesson that I learned was finding the right people to
mhm.
be able to grow things faster you
Yeah,
know
yeah, that's amazing. Um, and I wanted to ask, like, with that, when did you make the decision to, like, you had the idea and then you thought like, okay, I wanna dive into it. Like,
Mhm.
did you do that because, hey, I want to help entrepreneurs? Um, when did you kind of take that deep dive, when you like kind of like or like walk through the door like type of
uh-huh.
thing, where you're saying, okay, I wanna do this? Um,
Uh-huh.
what was the reasoning of why you did that? Was it to help entrepreneurs? The entrepreneurial spirit, wanting to do that? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, for me, i I really wanted to do something that worked with entrepreneurs. And I had spent so much time working with entrepreneurs. And that was the thing that, I was really passionate about. When I would go to events and I could go talk to people and help them and know that I did something that made a difference. With my brand, I felt like, well, yeah, I'm helping people, but it's, just a commodity that I'm selling. I'm not really connecting with them. But when I'm connecting with entrepreneurs, I can see that I make a difference in people's lives. And the ripple effect of, if I can help someone to quit their job and be able to spend more time with their family, or, be less stressed, or whatever it is, uh, encouraging people to make more money and then they go donate to charity. I saw that that was a some of the most impactful things that you can do in your business is to help empower others to reach further and to
Yeah.
accomplish more of their goals.
Mhm.
Um, so the
Well,
moment that
mhm.
it was for me was just really, I saw it was an opportunity,
Yep.
and that I had an idea of how I could fix it.
Mhm.
And then that really, when it all shook out, it was what I was more passionate about doing. So I wanted to be able to, have my other businesses. And I really had to start relying on people to step up and help to run those businesses so that I could focus on SoStocked.
Well, what's really interesting is a lot of people, especially in the American culture, like
Mhm.
we work so hard every single day and to chase to chase this fulfillment of like
Mhm.
a bigger car, bigger house, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And we always think that is going to be the sources of our fulfillment, and that's why the American culture works so hard every single day. But what's
Mhm.
interesting is what I figured out is the human brain is designed to get fulfillment by helping other people. That is like
Yeah.
through time, like the people that is like our brains are hardwired to when we do something good for others, we our brains are hardwired to get fulfillment out of that. So
Mhm.
it doesn't
Yeah.
come out of external objects and things like that. That's what leads to the endless chase, is what I figured out. That the
Mhm.
endless chase of, oh my gosh, once I get to this goal, I'm gonna be happy. Once I get to this goal, I'm gonna be fulfilled. It's
Right.
an endless chase because it's never going to
Mhm.
happen. But once you start helping people, you actually start to realize that you get fulfillment out of that.
Yeah.
So it's a whole other mindset rather than the chase that a lot of us do on a daily basis. Helping
Mhm.
other people accomplishes that fulfillment and is the quickest way to happiness, which is really interesting because it takes a level of happiness, give fulfillment to other people. So you have to
Uh-huh.
start small, which is a whole other snowball effect. It's very
Yeah.
fascinating. It really
Yeah.
is.
No, I 100% agree. That's definitely been a huge driver for me. And you once you're at a place where you're comfortable enough, where you're not like grinding it out, or in a job that makes you absolutely miserable, you can kind of come up for air and say, well, okay, now that I've gotten out of what I hate and I'm into what is good, what can I do to make myself great? And
True.
that in itself gets kind of like kind of difficult. uh, One of my favorite sayings is good is the enemy of great, in that if things are going badly, that you got to get out of that situation. But if things are going good, then you can kind of tend to rest on your laurels. So what is it that can help you to want to get up in the morning and actually attack something? So that
Yeah.
was, for me, I felt like I was in the good, and the good started feeling bad. Like I started feeling like I was going through the motions. I wasn't excited, and it was just kind of this rote thing. I wasn't passionate about selling a physical product that I wasn't passionate about, and I didn't have an idea for a physical product that I would be passionate about, but I really was passionate about entrepreneurs.
Hmm. That's really amazing. That's really amazing, and that's a really good concept of like when your life is only good. It's
Hmm.
important to keep striving more than that. Like rather
Hmm.
than kind of staying in the same stable place. It's kind of like if you're not growing, if you're
Yeah.
staying stable, you're basically declining. You have to be growing
Uh-huh.
in order to actually be going somewhere. And it's almost the same
Uh-huh.
philosophy of
Yeah.
good is there's so much good, there's always so much more better than good. It's
Hmm.
always
Yeah.
important to strive for great and um, to gain fulfillment off of that as well.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
it's really easy to get stuck in a rut of of the constant chase. To be honest, like
Yeah.
it's easy for me to work 14 hours a day, but then I have to
Hmm.
realize like to step back, like, hey, it's okay to work 10 hours a day.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's important to
Yeah.
have that conversation,
Yeah. It
and
is
to go through
it is
that.
important. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I agree. And that was one of the things that I found interesting. I've been trying to do more of that kind of step back, and okay, you actually have to enjoy life,
Yeah,
and you should have hobbies. I used to be asked
yeah,
on podcasts, what are your hobbies? And I was like, well, I like to organize my fridge, and I like to chop vegetables for dinner. And like, that was like my hobbies. And now I'm doing more things. Like I've got a garden, and I did a paint by numbers, and I
yeah.
hopefully one day learning to sew or something like that. Those types of things. So that, because we have a very different culture here in America than over in Europe and overseas,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's important for us to be centered.
And like I used to work 14 hours a day, and if I worked anything less than that, I would actually
Mm.
criticize myself and saying, "Hey, like,
Yep.
why did you not like?" you got to be working toward your future. You got to be doing something.
Yeah.
And then I had a realization moment of that my future self is going to eventually regret working 14 hours a day and saying I didn't do enough fun stuff.
Yeah.
And I actually realized that I'm hurting my future self by working
Mhm.
14 hours a day.
Yeah.
And that's when I started doing one fun thing a day, whether it's volleyball, whether it's country dancing, whether it's rock climbing, whatever it may be. I always do one fun thing a day.
Yeah.
And I had to have a conversation with myself saying, "Hey, instead of 14 hours a day, I'm going to work 10, sometimes 9 if I'm feeling like frisky on certain days." um,
Yeah.
uh, but that was important conversation to have with me, so that way I have that one fun thing per day, and it keeps it where that balance of my present self and my future self are in a better balance, because my future self would
Mhm.
always win the battle saying, hey, you got to be
Yeah.
working toward your future, and
Yeah.
that's it 14 hours a
Mhm.
day just working toward your future. That's all you should care about.
Yeah.
But once you realize that, and you actually allow your present self to win, sometimes saying, hey, I'm
Mhm.
doing this because it makes me happy right now. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a whole weird concept for me. It's like, what, like, why would I
Mhm.
eat that piece of cake? It's just gonna make me fat. And they're like, wait, it's good to actually eat the cake because I'm gonna gain pleasure for a few seconds and be happy
Mhm.
in that exact second. So
Yeah.
it's that balance of that present and future self. It's really hard to come
Yes.
by. Yes.
Exactly. I had that problem, in the future, someday I'll be happy when, and you have
Yeah.
these ideas of these things that you've put in front. And once you get to those points, you'll be happy. And then those points happen. And then you're like, oh, well, that didn't feel the way that I thought it would feel. So we got to keep pushing. We got to keep going. And, life is the journey, you're in it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And you're so right about the American culture and European culture. I swear, like, Europeans don't even work. Like, when it comes to, they talk about their, it's not fiesta, it's like some siesta, some kind of word, but
Siesta.
basically siesta,
Yeah.
like the midday nap or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. Um,
Uh-huh.
that is so foreign in American culture
Mhm.
that like, it's like something crazy that most Americans, like 75 plus, don't use up all their vacation time. The 2 weeks that they do get,
Yeah.
they almost none end up using it. And the ones that do take vacation, 50% or more usually work on their vacation time. It's like that's how crazy Americans are, as
Yeah.
like we have to have that work. Um, and the last podcast, I realized we actually get an identity with our work, and
Mhm.
we that becomes a part of us. And once we go through these failures, we realize that, like, for example, if we get fired, or we leave our jobs, our like, we leave our entrepreneurial journey, whatever it may be, we realize that our business, our work, is not who we are. That's why when
Mhm.
you get fired, you're like, oh my gosh, you're not shocked about being fired. You're shocked because you just lost your identity of who you are.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating that we get caught up in this identity of who we are is through our work. But
Mhm.
you have to take a step back sometimes and realize, hey, like, I'm Victor Dwyer. I am separate from whatever is happening,
Mhm.
which I
Yeah.
still struggle with, by the way. I still work, like, I still work 12 hours a day. So I am
Yeah.
not like this guy that works, that doesn't work. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that, but I
Yeah.
do try to have
Mhm.
fun in the present. Try.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Cool. And Chelsea, is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that you communicated today, or any other subject, whether it's inventory related, if
Mhm.
it's entrepreneur related,
Mhm.
that you want to make sure you covered today?
Um, I mean, I guess I could bring up uh the concept of one of my favorite books that I have read. I don't know. It seems like it's a common book that a lot of people have read, but then I'm surprised that there are a lot of people that haven't read it. And it's called The One Thing. I don't know if you've heard of The One Thing.
I have it.
Okay. So The One Thing was written by one of the founders of Keller Williams Realty,
Okay.
the
Yeah,
real estate
I know them.
company.
Yeah.
So one of the things that he discovered is that he would tell his executive team, what are the 5 things we're going to do? 5 things. And then next week would come by. None of them would get done. Okay, what are the 3 things we're going to do? None of them would get done. 2 things. These are the 2 things. Next week, these have to have been done. Didn't get done. So finally, he cut it back to what is the one thing that we're going to do? And that finally got the thing done. So that's something that I think becomes very, very important. Is he said you have to frame it in the way of what is that one thing that you could do such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. And although it's not always possible to kind of clear that space to make that happen, that's something that I've tried to adopt in some ways of what's the initiative that we have to focus on right now that's gonna change things. And sometimes it feels like it's a step back, but sometimes you have to step back to step forward. Maybe it's organizing your business and we think we've got to go, but if we don't get the structure in place and assign people, to specific KPIs and get people delegated and those types of things, if we do everything ourselves and we don't focus on that, for example, delegating, that would be the one thing, I remember that was the one thing in my instance that I never would do it, but that made everything easier or unnecessary. And so that's kind of one of those things that I think every entrepreneur should know. They've got all of these emails coming in and all of these videos and everything telling them you need this, no, you need that, you need to sign up for this course or that, or your problem is that you're not doing Facebook ads, or your problem is that your PPC sucks. Figure out what is that one thing for you, get really good at that one thing, and then move on to the next thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really great. That's really smart when it comes to, rather than focusing on a lot of different tasks, like really focusing on why to accomplish those tasks and saying what is the most important. That's really fascinating, actually. Something I need to probably adopt. I usually work on 17 different things all at once, so
yeah,
I
me
probably
too.
have a
That's
few things to
why.
learn with that.
Yeah, that's why I try to remind myself of it, because I'm one of those people as well. So it's there's a similar concept called context switching, and there have been studies done where I'm not sure what percentage of the time, but when you are switching from one thing to another, it takes you a certain number of minutes, and it's not a small amount of minutes, to actually get yourself back into what you were doing. So if you're constantly switching to all these different things, you're actually becoming less productive because you have to reframe that task for yourself each time.
Yeah. And it's even more difficult as an entrepreneur because you're doing like 17,000 tasks like bootstrapping certain things that need to be done. And so yes, yes, 100% on that. But yes, doing everything at once. I'm going to try to accomplish one task at a time. We'll see how long that gets me.
Yeah, the perfection of whatever and the reality of life, or whatever that saying is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So Chelsea, thank you so much for coming on. That's all we have time for today. Chelsea, please tell them how to find you, how to find SoStocked and everything else. Oh, and please announce your exciting news with SoStocked as well.
Sure. So yeah, you can reach me at SoStocked.com/connect. We have a demo of SoStocked there. You can connect with me. You can find my socials. And then we also have a bunch of free tools. There's a link to our free tools on that page. And then direct link to the free tools is SoStocked.com/tools. And as far as the exciting news, we have been building SoStocked from, we launched in 2019. And then as of 2022, in about a month ago in June, we actually were acquired by Carbon 6. So our entire team is now working with Carbon 6. We're continuing to run that company, our company, SoStocked, but we will have a lot more resources, a lot more ability to develop tools faster. We're going to be going into profitability tools, cash flow tools, and we'll really be able to do a lot more, a lot faster.
That's awesome. That's super exciting. I know I know a lot of people that got within Carbon 6. So
Mm-hmm.
like Troy, I know like all the
Yeah.
guys that eventually get into Carbon 6. So
Uh-huh.
it's just funny. It's just funny
Yeah.
everything that how everything comes together like that. It's just
Yep.
hilarious.
We're getting all the good ones. Yeah. Mike Zagari just announced. Mike Zagari from PPC Entourage. They just announced him. I've known for a while that he was joining, and we've been working together within Carbon 6. But yesterday was the day that they officially announced that PPC Entourage joined
Cool.
the
That is
Carbon 6
really
family.
exciting. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you everyone for listening. This is the Failures and Wins podcast. Thank you everyone for listening.